their YouTubes and their avocado toast.
Okay, Boomer.
You kids don't know how good you have it.
Okay, Boomer. Hey, Dad, what's the Wi-Fi password? I need to know the Wi-Fi password.
Okay, Zoomer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Okay Boomer, Okay Zoomer. I am your host, Gantt and with me is the lovable Daddysquatch.
Good day, Gantt.
So, as you could probably hear from that little jingle before, we are deciding to talk about, this is a conversation that I typically have with Daddysquatch, is how he sometimes watches Back to the Future, particularly Back to the Future Part 2, and how he always whines to me about how you were supposed to have flying cars, we were supposed to have hoverboards, where is all that stuff?
That's right. I'm supposed to be able to predict the weather accurately.
So I figured what this episode would be was that we would have like a little conversation about technology today, as well as we're looking at 3 different technologies today and sort of comparing and contrast what they expected from Back to the Future as well as other sci-fi stories. It could be anything, Daddysquatch, from your generation. It could be the Jetsons, it could be Star Wars, it could be anything. So we're going to be looking at a few technologies, but obviously the one that I would start with is the flying cars.
Yeah, so in the Back to the Future, the second one, they go to the future, and it's 2015, and they've got flying cars, and they actually got highways in the sky as far as these flying cars going through, and all different things. And where are our flying cars? Where's the technology that we can do it and get to the next level?
Now, in the future, obviously there are flying cars today, so Daddysquatch, you're wrong. There are flying cars.
Okay, yes, there are, quote, technical cars you can convert into an airplane with a lot of putzing around, and I think there's one car that actually folds up into, it looks like a car, and then you can unfold it to make it look like an airplane. But the closest thing I have seen yet is the personal drone, the Jetson. And that is basically, looks like, a drone, but it's big enough that you can sit in it. And it'll take off from your driveway. You can get it to an altitude of 1,500 feet. The thing flies at 60 miles an hour. And, it's got a parachute in case batteries go out or you're just not a good pilot. The parachute comes out. Now I'm starting to think of about time, but I'm too old for that now. That's just not fair.
And how much does the car cost?
Oh, well, you got to put some of it together, but I think they start at like $90,000.
So, very cost prohibitive kind of thing.
Well, it's the first generation tech. It's a small company out of Sweden that's building it, so as the technology gets more adapted and other people start to copy it or whatever, you'll see the price go down.
So, kind of like with how computers in the 80s, you can buy a computer back in the 80s, but they were kind of a niche kind of thing. It wasn't until the 90s and the 2000s that computers started to become commonplace.
Yeah, the computers, when they first came out, were very expensive, and they did not do much. And there was no such thing as, well, there was the internet, but it wasn't for the households. More the universities had the internet, and the internet at that point wasn't what you considered what you got today. The first time we got onto the internet, I could do some banking online, or you might be able to buy an airline ticket. And that was about it.
Yeah, so obviously the technology is going to adapt, but obviously Daddysquatch is rather upset that we don't have flying cars today. And I would argue that maybe it's a good thing that we don't have flying cars today.
Well, I like to do...
Okay.
It depends on the driver, I would agree. But Yeah, I've seen some drivers out there that, it might be a blessing in disguise that we don't have flying cars, but still the ability or the technology it takes to do that, I think would be, because, probably going to be electric, probably going to have some kind of an energy source. In Back to the Future, they used Mr. Fusion, which would using materials to create fusion energy, and by doing that, you had clean, plentiful energy instead of gas or electric cars with batteries and stuff that are dirty. I mean, you'd have Mr. Fusion, which is you'd use banana peels to fly off into to the next town.
Okay, but isn't it a good thing that we don't have fusion reactors, for the average consumer?
Why is that?
Isn't it okay, like, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, oh yeah, there would be a bunch of, advanced technology, that we would have, like, fusion generators, But here's my reason for being hesitant to having homemade, in-the-home fusion generators is, could you weaponize it?
Well, you'll find out that fusion energy is not like fission energy. Fission energy, your atomic bombs, were very dirty, mainly because of uranium or plutonium you'd use in there. Had a big radioactive isotope, so when you exploded it, all that dirty energy went over there. Remember, fusion basically is taking water, taking an isotope of the core, and you're fusing it together to create the energy. It releases it. So it's not as dirty. Now, granted, it's more powerful. So typically when they're dropping a fusion bomb or an H bomb, hydrogen bomb, it's initially started out with a atomic bomb to get the pressure and the temperature up enough that you can create fusion and then create a fusion reaction. That's why hydrogen bombs are so dirty too, is because it takes an atomic bomb to start a hydrogen bomb.
Yes, but at the other end of the spectrum, it isn't just the radiation that we worry about when it comes to atomic bombs. It's obviously, the bang. I mean, the government is pretty, worried about people making conventional bombs. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, I agree, but what I'm saying is that the technology was there to create that. We're not even close to that. We don't even have a workable fusion reactor. According to the TV show, everybody had a fusion reactor. I would be happy if we had, fusion reactors to generate our electricity.
I agree, but I wouldn't want, like, the average consumer
Okay.
to have a fusion generator. I feel like that's something that needs to be regulated.
Well, I agree, but according to the show, it's regulated, it's in a car and stuff. And besides, I'm not the average consumer. I'm above average. So, therefore, I could have one.
You're the consumer. So, going back to the flying cars, obviously, when we're talking about, like, drivers, I wouldn't want, because, like, I was watching a video recently today that really kind of made me mad, where you had these guys, and they were basically driving way too fast for city roads, and they were doing all these dangerous, switching lanes, not really blinking. They were doing this really dangerous racing, at what was obviously, I could probably see like 80, 90 miles an hour in city roads, which is way too fast. But it gets worse. They were streaming the whole thing. It gets even worse. While they were advertising it, they were drinking beer. They were drinking alcohol, while driving at these insane speeds, actively drunk driving.
Well,
and all I can think of is, what if this happens in the future with the flying cars? People drinking and driving.
Well, there's other things that you can put inside vehicles that you can disable it if you've been drinking, such that you can't fly on that. You can put governors in there to, maintain speed. And I agree. It makes me mad too is people on streets that are going too slow, too fast. Not paying attention. They own the road, and we all share the road. That brings up all the other ethical parts of having the flying car. But again, I get back to my basic point. I would like to see at least the technology exists that we could do that. We have spent all of our creative energy on an iPhone or an Android and AI technology. That's right. I want to see, let's talk about, besides flying cars, space travel. There's another one of my things.
So, obviously, in a lot of sci-fi TV shows, you see, like, with, like, Star Trek and Star Wars, and this one's pretty obscure, Space 1999, with the idea of space travel being a, typical, thing. Like, we were promised, like, rockets to the moon colonies or things like that, and obviously we're not anywhere near that.
Yeah, I mean, a flight to the moon, Space 1999, yeah, actually, that's a very good one. I look at Star Wars and Star Trek, that's way out there, but what was interesting about Space 1999, and it was made in the 70s, was it was saying that, yes, we could get the technology, we could develop the technology in 20 years, probably, to be doing this stuff. You think about it, for mankind dealing with flying, they didn't start flying an airplane until 1903. And in 1969, they're landing on the moon. That's 66 years. Think of any other technology that is advanced that fast.
Well, I feel like what made that technology advanced so fast was, again, American pride and American ego. Because, here's the thing about, like, we're obviously referencing the space race. America had a lot to gain from landing on the moon, which was to kind of show off to the rest of the world how powerful they were. But at this point, America, the Soviet Union's gone and, or gone, quote unquote, given what's going on right now. But, the Soviet Union's gone and America, hasn't really had much of an ideological, rival or really a reason to advance, towards space travel. There hasn't been a competitor, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
I feel like...
But, that's what's sad is that it shouldn't have been a competitor. You should have been doing it. One is that, there's resources on the moon, helium-3. Supposedly helium-3 is highly abundant on the moon, and it's actually a very, it's a stopgap fuel you can use while you're developing fusion. Very clean to convert, and it's a very high potential instead of using your fossil fuels or depending on wind and sun. But you got to get up there. You can go to Mars, or you can go to all the different places and stuff and really start expanding, the technology and everything you think about from the space, from getting to space, and the technology it took to do that. We're enjoying the benefits of today still. I mean, I was looking on the internet last night, and guess what you can still buy? You could still buy Tang. Can you believe it? The drink the astronauts used to have.
Oh yeah, the drink that your mom, my grandma, would water down very heavily.
Well, it was watered down to begin with and stuff. I'll have to get a container so I'll have you try some. But no, I'm just talking about like computers, microcomputers. If you take a look at how circuit boards are made, the traditional way they made them in the old days was through hole. Today it's surface mount. Well, surface mount was a technology that was developed because of going into outer space. So your cell phone would not work very good with through hole technology. But if you open it up, it's all surface mount. So you've got that, the materials they use to build the ship. We're using an aircraft today, so you got planes that are lighter, stronger, faster. I mean, the benefits you get from the engineering it takes to build this is it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think, like, there's been a lot of engineering, like you hear of different companies, trying to privatize, trying to get into outer space because obviously as we've, seen, the government has been giving NASA budget cuts, so it's one of those, maybe we should leave it to kind of private companies kind of thing.
Yeah, well, the government gave up. You're right. They sat there, well, we don't need to go into space. We've already been up there, and the Russians, they're not going up there, and nobody else is, so let's spend our money somewhere else. And there's a big gap and lost opportunity now. Granted, they had the shuttle, and the shuttle was flying for a while, but still, we did some experiments in space, and, we did a few things with the shuttle. I mean, they built the International Space Station, but, I don't think anybody really cares about that anymore. But what's interesting is what Elon Musk has done. Now, granted, you've got Bezos and a couple other people are building their spaceships, but it's Elon Musk that's taken that engineering entrepreneurship to the next level. He's building rockets that go up and they come back down. They land the boosters back down. They don't fall in the ocean. He's building starships. He's building the next thing in there. I mean, I give it to old Elon Musk. He did electric cars, and face fact, Teslas have made electric cars a reality. I mean, everybody else did electric cars. They go in for a little while and they drop back out again. Tesla, they're making thousands of cars, and you see more and more electric cars out there, and they're always Teslas. And
that being said,
go ahead.
That being said, I will say that Elon Musk buying Twitter was not his smartest decision.
Well, here's why he did it. He did it because Twitter became a platform it was not free anymore, and he wanted it to be. He believes that you should have, free speech, and Twitter was starting to ban things, and Twitter was, pushing one point of view. So he said, "Well, that's enough," and he got rid of most of the people there that were dead weight. I mean, Twitter hasn't died. It just changed its name.
Yeah, it's become X now, and Twitter is there, but I just, I keep hearing bad things, about Twitter users, but
well,
it's there.
See, now here comes the boomer again. Who needs Twitter?
I don't use Twitter.
I don't use Twitter either. Not that Elon, good luck with it, but I'm not a Twitter user. I'm not an Instagram user. I mean, hell, I just Discord here. I feel so in the
Your boomer energy is increasing.
Oh, I know. It makes me feel, all I'm ready about the social media.
I want to go back to passenger pigeons and carrier pigeons.
No. But, if we're to speak about rotary phones, and people be like, what? Phones with lines to the wall? What? What is this you speak of?
Hey, I would remember those phones. Granted, I didn't use them much, but they were there.
I'd love to get an old rotary phone. Those are funny.
True. So going back to space travel, I think one problem that, with space travel that I've heard people talk about, like, the engineering involved would be immense to try to build, like, a space colony.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that there was a video which was discussing why at the level of technology we're at right now, it would not be a good idea to build a Mars colony. And the reason why they say is because you're going to take a bunch of people and you're going to put them on this faraway rock, fourth from the sun, that's, I think it's 35 million miles away and it's closest from Earth.
No.
I could be wrong.
40 million miles.
40 million miles.
Don't you listen to your War of the Worlds?
Okay, boomer. So anyways, it's far away from space, and you want people to essentially live in what effectively is a desert, the frontier lands, and it's very, like, we have this romanticized image of the Pilgrims, setting up their own little colony, or the pioneers going along the Oregon Trail, but I think that right now people kind of like the creature comforts, like being in a desolate area, it's going to be a very hard sell, especially given the fact that at least when the pilgrims set up their colony, that there was at least air to breathe and room to move around. So that would just add more psychological pressure on
Yeah,
people.
but you take a look at the poor pilgrims coming across the ocean. They were in ships that were, I would say, not the best ships. But if you take a look at like the Mayflower, that wasn't a big ship. There were a lot of them in there, and they
Well,
landed
yeah,
on Massachusetts. Well, it wasn't what you consider the agricultural capital of the United States, and that's how they're trying to make their thing. They had to hunt. They had already an indigenous population living there, so they're like, oh, whoa, wait, what are you guys coming over here for?
yeah, but at
So,
the very least,
but
when
you
they
know why
were
they did it.
building, yeah, to get away from, they wanted to establish their own community because they didn't like the Anglican Church and wanted to establish a church separate from it, separate from the corrupting influences of the outside world.
Right. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's creature comforts. I mean, you ask me if I want to sit there and go to Mars. Yeah, maybe when I was like 20 or 30 and still kind of like, ooh, sense of adventure. Now I'm like, they actually talked about people that would come to Mars would have to stay on Mars. They couldn't come back. And if they did come
Yeah,
back, it would be a high probability they'd be dead after they landed on the Earth.
yeah, like, I don't know if we've ever. Like, obviously, one of the things that they tell you about living in space is that the human body isn't able to calcify, suffers decalcification due to, microgravity. But I'm wondering, like, what is the absolute limit of how much gravity the human body needs to function properly?
Well, I mean, a lot of the space shows, they talk about the initial spaceships going there. They have some kind of unit on the spaceship that's spinning. So they're using
Yes.
centrifugal force or centripetal force to basically simulate the acceleration of gravity. So they can get you up to a 1g acceleration on this wheel. So when you go out to the edge of the wheel, you simulate, okay, I'm on 1g and stuff. So, but that's one of the things, again, you talked about the number of engineers it would take to basically create the spaceship, create the habitat, create the ability to carry food and water, because you're going to have to carry that to Mars. I mean, they did find water, but you still got to have food to get there. You got to land it on the planet. You got to build a colony. All these different things that you had to do. And it was interesting. Your uncle, um, in college, he worked for, oh, I can't remember which division of NASA it was. It was in the San Francisco area. They had uh, a NASA station was set up. And actually, Google is near there now. But the whole premise of what they were doing there was just looking at the probability or what it would take to build a Mars habitat. So if you ever want to talk to him about it, some of the creation or the ideas they had, they're kind of wild, but they were looking at all it would take to do that. But why couldn't we do that today? What's the biggest problem we have today?
Well, obviously, it would be, trying to get there and, try to get people that would actually sign up for it. But another thing that I remember hearing about was when they tried to create, like, as an experiment, they tried to create, like, an isolated habitat to see how well that it would work. And as it turns out, it didn't work out so well. They had to constantly keep shipping in resources in and out. The people being in the closed quarters started to despise each other because there was no space for them to, sort of get their own private time. And the worst part of it all was that, when you think about like trying to turn oxygen, or taking carbon dioxide and turning it into oxygen, obviously you're thinking, well, we could just use plants. Well, they didn't necessarily get the ventilation for the system done appropriately and found that they had oxygen levels inside that room that were comparable to what you would experience if you were on top of Mount Everest, which is not good.
Well, no. But the biggest challenge there is right now is in today's society, something when I was coming out of engineering school, engineers were all over the place. There were a lot of engineers and companies looking for engineers and all that. The problem is that today, when you were going to school as an engineer, I mean, tell me where a lot of students in the classes or few students in the classes.
I would say it was anywhere from maybe 30 students at most to somewhere around, yeah, I'd say like 30 students would be a rough number per class.
Okay, because I know my classes there, we would be in lecture halls where you'd have 100 to 120 students in there. Now, granted,
Yeah.
we went to different colleges, but
Yeah.
the problem is this is one thing right now we're noticing, even where I work at. We're working a high-tech business and try to find engineers, try to recruit engineers. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know what you mean. Like, I've even heard some of my supervisors talk about, where I work, which shall not be named, but we do some work and, with different things, and we're struggling to find new engineers right now.
Yeah, and engineering is a tough field to begin with. But again, in order to advance, just like I said, flying cars, space travel, you need people that are going to sit there and run the numbers and experiment, refine, run the numbers, experiment, refine. Keep doing that, It's like they're going to create artificial gravity. How would you do that, such that you wouldn't have to have a spinning part of the ship, because to have the spinning part of the ship and you're going somewhere, that's always a course correction because you got torque on this. Plus, if the seals break or the motor goes dead, or so you want to look at solid state versus mechanisms that simulate gravity, and the engines that you would use on there. Can we get more efficient engines, or engines that create better thrust such that you can get there faster? I mean, you think about it. Acceleration, the human body can only take so many G's for any extended period of time. And then you got to, get to a constant acceleration. But as soon as you get halfway there, then you got to decelerate, so you can get into orbit. And then you got to calculate the celestial mechanics behind it in order to get from this planet to that planet. But you got to remember that it's not a straight line. It's like you got to point to somewhere where that planet's going to be in 8 months.
Have you ever, I know I obviously know the answer to this question, but have you ever played the game Kerbal Space Program?
No.
It's a video game where you are an engineer and you have to do exactly what you just described. Like, you have to get a spaceship within a certain orbit. You got to build the rockets. You have to design them. It's basically a more, I would say, dumbed down version of engineering, but it does look pretty cool.
Right, but how many people play it?
Probably not enough. Not a lot. I know, cousin who shall not be named, plays it, for privacy reasons.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: is that your cousin or my cousin?
My cousin.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, that's the whole point. What's the one you always play with or playing on?
The game that
Skyline or something like that?
Skyrim.
Skyrim, okay. A lot of people play Skyrim, right?
Yeah, a lot of people play Skyrim. The 3 games that I typically play are Skyrim, Sims, and Minecraft, which Minecraft, there is some engineering involved, although there's some. Like, I've seen some people build some really impressive stuff in Minecraft.
But see, that's what I'm saying is that a lot more people are playing games that are, role play games where you're going on a quest, or you're with a squad of men and you're playing war games, or you're in an airplane from World War II war games. But yes, it's dexterity. You got to pay attention. You got to handle the controls. You got to do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not sitting there challenging your mind to think of the next stuff. True.
Okay, Boomer. But I guess I can see your point. So yeah, as far as, obviously, if you were thinking about, engineering is a difficult field, but for those of you who are thinking about it, I would say, take a few classes, practice some skills. We need more engineers. Please help us. We need more engineers in this world.
Well, I hate to say this. United States, will get a wake-up call, because if an engineer is a good paying job and all that, but if you can't get them from this country, they'll get them from another country.
True. I mean, yeah, so, yeah, obviously we are going to have some challenges with space travel, although while we may not be, while it may be more of a private venture right now, I have a sneaking suspicion that America is going to try to put another man on the moon the very second that China or any other country tries to put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
Like, it could be Canada, and we would basically be like, Canada, we've accepted your challenge, we're going back to the moon.
Oh, no, that sounds like one thing I see on the internet where the United States has like an eye and eyes and a mouth, and they're talking to all the different countries.
Habitual line crosser.
Yeah, habitual line crosser. Yes, that's. I like that one. I like the F-22. That's my hero.
I like the Grandpa Buff.
Grandpa Buff's good too. I like that. That's pretty good. See, we're plugging for other people. Is that great?
Yeah. So, another technology that I'm sure that a lot of sci-fi shows talk about, and one that Daddysquatch is like, no, we can't build this. Go back. Haven't you seen the movies? This is a terrible idea. Obviously, I'm hinting at robots and artificial intelligence.
Ooh, yeah, you hit the one I hate. Well, it was interesting because I think we were at EAA, which is, for people who don't know, it's Experimental Aircraft Association. They have a big convention in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And Gantt chart myself made the trek, and we went there and we went to see this. But we were going, I think it was the NASA Pavilion, and they had Boston Dynetics or that or Scientific, but they had it's a dog without a head robot. And they were just how it was adaptable, and it was learning this, and it was learning that. They were so proud of it. I saw it, and I said, kill it. Get rid of it. And the guy kind of looked at me and I said, all that technology should be destroyed. You should be burning it, and you should bury it, and never... And the guy said, what are you talking about? This is brilliance in engineering. And I said, you put a frickin' machine gun on the back of that thing, it run it through this EAA here, I said, you would kill thousands of people with that damn thing. Oh, we would never do that. I said, you may not, but there are people that would do that. Can you imagine that? That's why I get afraid of these robots. I don't mind if it's a robot in the middle of a factory and all it does is spot weld body for cars, or does spray paint, or does stuff that is repetitive and it's tough on humans. But I don't want the robot mobile, and I don't want it thinking.
I mean, so this was actually... So we're getting to that point, and this is a funny story that I remember listening to from Internet Historian, where... So corporations are experimenting with trying to build an artificial intelligence. Now, in every story where you're trying to think of a way to shut down an artificial intelligence, you would think about, like, trying to create paradoxes or try to, maybe infect it with a computer virus. But there was one story that it sounds funny just because of the context of it, where Microsoft decided to try to build their own artificial intelligence. And 4chan heard about this. Now, 4chan is someone who would put the fear of God on you if you are on the internet. Well, they're not bad guys, but you know what I mean. Anyways, 4chan decided, okay, let's find a way to shut down this AI. Now, this AI, it's owned by a corporation. Is there a way we could compel the corporation to shut it down themselves? And this is the plan they came up with. the AI that they were working on, which was called Tay, the way it learns is through interacting with people through the internet. So the people on 4chan decided, could we use that to teach Tay naughty opinions? So, as a result of constant interactions, you basically had a robot that would spout sexist, racist, anti-Semitic remarks. And the people at Microsoft are kind of like tugging their shirt collars and are like, okay, shut it down.
I tell you, that's it.
Well, I mean, you don't want to be the one to build the robot that says, here, you want to hear a joke? Women's rights. That'll be taken out of context.
Oh, well, I mean, here's the thing is that, you take a look at all these different movies and whatever, it's like, what was the Matrix? And somebody, we're talking in a team meeting, and they said, oh, like the Matrix, all these robots will be doing all of our work, and we'll be able to be, and I said, become batteries. He said, what? I said, we'll be the batteries for the robots. That's all we're going to be good for. Yes, I know you can sit there and robots don't tire. They're running on basically a program, so the mistakes they make are less and less, but they still make mistakes. And the thing is, it's like, I can liken this to when humans and Neanderthals met each other. So I don't know if you know about the history of this, but okay, so when they met, it wasn't a good thing. It was a very bad thing. And Neanderthals were big, strong, nocturnal hunters. They were very good at what they did, and they just about destroyed the human race. So, it's always happened in human society when one group of humans meets another. Well, what if you got one group of humans meeting a group of robots? And they're synthetic, but, each group kind of eyes each other differently, and they're going to have different aspirations, thoughts, and all that. And, okay, so Battlestar Galactica, Matrix, The Terminator, Dune. These are all movies that came from, a robot society, and the humans fighting.
Yeah, which I can understand where you're coming from, and the worry about, like, self-aware AI is definitely something like that. I don't think we're at that point yet where we can build self-aware AI, or self-aware robots.
But why do people want to do that? I don't understand.
I think it's more a case of just wanting to build a more powerful robot. Like,
no.
I was watching...
No.
Like, I was watching a Down the Rabbit Hole episode which talked about it's a 2-hour-long documentary, but it was kind of interesting where it's IBM trying to teach a computer how to play chess. And you kind of see the development where the question is, could a computer play chess? Could a computer be able to play as like a grandmaster? To the question being, could a computer defeat the grandmaster? Because for the longest time, IBM was unable to defeat the Grand Chess Master, who was Kasparov from the Soviet Union at the time. But eventually they were able to build a computer that they called Deep Blue, which was able to beat Kasparov in chess. Well, that's always that worry.
Yeah, but you got to remember, that's IBM. Okay, I worked at IBM. So,
And to be fair, it is an impressive computer. I think the guys that were involved with it is impressive what they were able to do. They were pioneers in their field.
Well, I mean, you take a look at the technology IBM developed. And it's funny because you think of IBM today, it's such a hollow shell of what it used to be. But, hard drives and computers, IBM. Basically, your computer itself, all the microchips and all the stuff in there that are made to be on surface mount, miniaturized and all that is IBM and stuff. And it was interesting. It's quite the company. I digress. That's the boomer in me.
I'll send you the link to the documentary. I think you'd find it really interesting. But another concern that I know people have about AI is obviously, like, would AI take away our jobs kind of thing? You know, like, even if AI does exactly what, if AI doesn't, someday go rogue and does what mankind expects it to do, could AI take away our jobs kind of thing? Like, because obviously, I remember you made a quote, which again sounds, boomerish, but I do think it does have a kernel of truth, which is everybody is always excited for new technology until that new technology threatens to put them out of a job.
Oh, absolutely. Think of people when the automobile was coming out, the people that made wagons and horse harnesses and all that, the industry that supported horse transportation.
Or another example that I remember hearing about was when ocean liners switched from using coal to using oil. You're thinking like, well, how is that, how would that cause some things? Is that you need an entire team of people to make sure that the boilers, are constantly stoked, where you don't need as many people if you were to do it with oil.
No, you pump it in versus shovel it in.
Yeah.
Think of that. I know it was reading, it was battleships, when they converted the battleships from using coal to using oil. What it did was it actually, there were less men needed for a battleship because they weren't coal fired or oil fired, and they could use those. They were able to open up more room in the ship until they found out that the big guns on the battleship weren't as important as all the anti-aircraft guns they put on there. So they were basically floating anti-aircraft things for the carriers. But
sense.
Each technology, as you go through it, I mean, think of the train industry that was in the United States in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and then all of a sudden, what's that flying overhead? And look at the train industry now. I mean, it's still used for transportation, but I mean, they used to have, you'd see the old pictures of the trains people would ride cross country and stuff. They'd have dining cars, they'd have observation cars, they would have bars, they'd have smoking rooms and all that. But it was kind of quite the trip to go cross country in a train, especially some of them got up to speeds of 60 and 70 miles an hour.
And nowadays we're in a cramped tube flying through the air in a couple of hours.
Granted, I mean, flying used to be quite the adventure. I remember the very first time I flew in a big airliner was our band went to Hawaii, and we were in a big 747. You don't see those flying anymore. Back then it was like, oh my. And we flew, and they gave us 2 snacks and a meal for a 6-hour flight. We got to watch 2 movies that were just coming out, or that were still in the theater. They give you the headphones. Now, granted, they had a big screen in each section, but you're like, I got to see a movie that I had to pay to go see in the theater. And they take care of you. They wine and dine. Yeah, I mean, you want a soda? Yeah. Can I get another soda? Yeah. Not like the cart coming through. Yeah, here's your cup of soda. Yeah, here's some nuts. Get out of my way. And getting on a plane was comfortable. There's plenty of room to stretch out. Yeah, I mean, air travel is horrible, but it's convenient. It's not luxury.
So, going back to artificial intelligence, one of the things that I remember, like, because I wanted to study this a bit, and learn a bit more, is that, have you heard about story generative AI?
I've heard something where it made a story and stuff. I don't know.
So there are programs online where you could type in a prompt and a computer will basically generate a story from you. And the way it works is that what they did was they gave a computer like 4 terabytes worth of information harvested from a computer or from the internet, to see how human beings would interact with each other, and try to create, AI writing, where it could create its own stories. The concern that people have is that would this put You know, because like people are like, oh, robots will never be able to threaten creative endeavors. And with something like this, you know, now it seems like, wait, could they threaten, you know, the jobs of writers or musicians? Because there are programs where you can have it generate songs based on a prompt, or you could have it generate a story. And a lot of concern has come out about that.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the music end of it.
Well,
You know, or it generates art even.
I always take a look at it as the creative nature, and here's where my goofy thing about, take this analogy for how I consider engineers. There are two types of engineers. You got an analytic engineer and you have a creative engineer. An analytic engineer does it by the book. They're happy when they can. There's a book of rules. They know all the procedures. They can quote exactly what procedure to use in this case, and this procedure to use in that case, and their writing is impeccable. Their instructions are impeccable because they know the rules, and they're good at that. It's when they have to think outside the box that they flounder. Whereas a creative engineer is like, looks at the book of rules, throws it away, and says, I'm going to create my own set of rules. And they take that, they think of things nobody else thought of. You know, Nikola Tesla, he was an engineer that thought outside the box, you know. And AC power, he created, you know, this is the way we should go. Or Edison was DC power. And DC is a little bit easier to generate than AC, but AC is more efficient. But it was out of the box thinking did that. So that's why I hope for humanity's sake that we still have that edge over silicon forever, is that they're always going to be bound by the rules because, you know, just like you said, they had to harvest that over the internet. But,
yeah,
you know, again, when it comes to the point of creating something, they're not creating it as much as they have the parameters and they can pick and choose within those parameters. Well, what happens if somebody has a completely different paradigm and approach to it? And,
exactly.
Right. So I always look at, you know, the things that you can do as an engineer or as you can do as a creative person, music, writing, approaches to problems and stuff, is that there are people that do it by the book and there's people that create the book.
Yeah, and I think that humans will always be in that position where they'll always be able to create new things. Like, I was watching the video and they were talking about like the limitations on this software or with this program. And there are limitations that still give humanity an edge. Like, for example, artificial intelligence would oftentimes create what they call hallucinations, where they will just come up with an idea that just comes straight out of nowhere that has nothing to do with the story. It has nothing to do with this idea, and it's like a disruption. It's like a, you know, where a character will suddenly change part of their identity, or a person will just on the fly, you know, like do it in such a way that it's often more a hindrance, if anything. Like, it's like something that comes out of the blue. You know, it's like, oh, Jerry hates strawberries. Jerry hates strawberries. Oh, Jerry's over there eating strawberries. And the other thing, too, that makes AI limited is that AI doesn't understand words the way humans do. It understands words in relation to other words.
Right.
So you're thinking, like, what do I mean by that? Well, when they were talking about this AI, they noticed that, you know, because obviously the only thing it has to work with is internet. So because it gathered data from the internet, it would associate words. And yes, this is very not so PC, but it would associate words like Muslim with terrorist, or atheist as correct, or mad, complaining, arrogant, that sort of thing.
Well,
like,
yeah,
it doesn't understand those ideas other than it doesn't understand words in relation to other words. You know what I mean? It's the only way it understands it.
And the other thing I always take a look at too with AI in anything is it's still dependent on people. And here's the weird thing about it. It's not people as much as it's not its creation. It's their maintenance. You know, we'll build circuit boards. And I'm like, okay, where you get the fiberglass from? Well, we'll order it. Who you can order it through? Who's going to put it together? Well, we'll get robots to do this. Have you created those robots to do what the humans used to do? Have you created the things such that you don't need humans to build memory, that you are allowed to grow your memory? I mean, humans could come up there and say, well, you got 4 terabytes. That's plenty. Like,
the other thing too is that robots are typically, and this is a point that you bring up, that robots are good to do repeatable behavior, but they're not adaptable like humans are.
Right. I mean, you take a look at when the human race started. Supposedly, I mean, it came from Africa, but they've adapted to all the different climates and conditions of this planet. From hot desert sun to ice cold desert Arctic area. And it just shows, when people are living up in the Arctic in igloos and how they're able to hunt, how they're able to stay alive up there. And they're thinking, this is the greatest thing, You get somebody in Africa, it's like looking up at the, that's horrible. That's death. People live in deep forests, people living in all different parts of this planet, and even off planet. That's why I see Mars. There is a group of people out there, just like what you talked about earlier, is who's going to want to go up there, probably be facing certain death, live in cramped, horrible conditions. You're never going to have probably all the pleasures you had on Earth. But then you think about that person says, yeah, but I get to explore and work on a whole new thing that nobody else has done. And maybe I'll die in 2 years, but maybe because of the work I did, the next group of people could expand it, and then pretty soon you actually have a decent colony on Mars. But it's because of those pioneers that first came out there. I mean, there's a lot of people that when you had the flying across the Atlantic, there were a lot of people that tried and they never found their bodies, or they never found their planes. They died in the trip, or they died close to making the landfall. But there's always that group of people that have adventure. Amelia Earhart, she's trying to fly around the world, and she didn't make it, to a particular island, or she disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to her, but she knew the risk, she knew the gambles, and she still did it.
So you are on your way. You're going to go the distance. Hercules reference.
Oh. Well, I hate to say this boomer's not going to go to Mars. Maybe Gantt chart could set up a Gantt chart on Mars.
So here's a question that I have to ask you. We've talked about robots. We talked about space travel. We've talked about flying cars. What's another technology that you were told would one day exist but never came to be?
Oh. Well, I'll tell you what. I would say the one thing that didn't come.
I got an answer. If
go for
while
it.
You're thinking. I was promised that one day, I know that, this is 90s, early 2000s, but I was promised that one day that mankind would be able to clone dinosaurs. Now, where's my velociraptor?
You don't want a velociraptor.
I don't care if a Tyrannosaurus tries to eat me. I just want to see some dinosaurs because Jurassic Park was my childhood, okay? I was promised that one day mankind would be able to clone extinct animals, and the closest we've gotten was cloning an Iberian ibex that only lasted for 40 minutes.
But see, you gotta remember what the best dinosaur was.
Oh, God.
That's a guess. People, type in, guess what Gantt chart's favorite dinosaur is.
Yeah, just spam whatever dinosaurs. Yeah, that'll be the question for us today. What Gantt chart's favorite dinosaur is. Go and see answers, we'll see what it comes up with. So,
Yeah, I was just thinking of as far as what advances and all that. I thought, oh, with computers would be more, communications would be better. I mean, back then they were talking about, we've got them now with computers now, but there's still, or with iPhones, or Android, you can have a two-way conversation. They're still not very good. Not like what I saw back then. You could actually have conversations and all that. The one thing I really thought was cool, and this would be, I won't see it, maybe you might see it in your lifetime as an engineer, but watch the movie Iron Man.
okay.
And when you watch, I can't remember the guy. Robert Downey Jr., he played character, I can't remember the guy's name. Tony Stark, there we go.
Yep.
So Tony Stark's designing his suit. And he's got his computers that's helping him do this. But you see, if you watch it, what he was able to do with a 3D computer right in his face, that they're making, virtual gloves and virtual panels. And, no, this looks good. The swiping. It wasn't with the drafting board. It wasn't with the mouse. It wasn't with other things. I mean,
So you want holograms?
the holograms. I don't know if you've ever seen Iron Man Gantt chart.
I have not.
At least go on YouTube and see if you can see Iron Man designing his suit. The computer in there is pretty cool.
Yeah,
as far as an engineer,
I think that would be cool technology.
Yeah, the cool technology that engineers had available to them, because when I started out designing work, my first engineering job, you know how I designed parts?
You did it with a drawing board, as opposed to me, where if I design a part, it would be through SolidWorks or Autodesk Inventor.
Right, whereas I did it with paper and pencil. Now today I do it with the same tools you do, but I've seen it migrate from paper and pencil all the way to 3D CAD. And the fact that you can use 3D printers, 3D things, that's some of the technology I never thought they would have, that I've come to appreciate. And also drafting computers too. There's another funny scene if you watch the movie Star Trek 4. And it's Scotty,
Okay.
and he's trying to teach the guy how to make what they called transparent aluminum, which is like plexiglass but lighter. And he's trying to give the guy basically the formula to make it. And Scotty goes up to an old Macintosh, he grabs a mouse, and he starts talking into the mouse of the computer. And the engineer that's near him says, no, you gotta use a keyboard. Scotty goes, how quaint. And he does the keyboard when he does it, but it's pretty funny. It's engineering humor.
Alright. Well, I think that, obviously, the future... Obviously, the future that you were predicting, maybe it didn't come to be, but I think that there's at least some cool stuff that's out there, like, obviously we got 3D printers, different computing softwares, we got some pretty cool stuff out there, and I can already hear Daddysquatch rolling his eyes and saying, I still want the flying car, damn it.
No, I think I'll tell you what, give me a Jetson, I'll be happy. You can go buy when you want.
So that was our episode on this topic of, the future and talking about new advanced technology. So that was, thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed. If you are curious about other episodes, we have some available on Spotify as well as YouTube, and we hope to hear from you guys soon and hope to, see some comments, Comment down below what you think that my favorite dinosaur is, and let us know down in the comments, how we're doing, whether we're doing good, if there's something that you would like to improve on, or even come up with a topic that you would like to suggest for us, talk about, between a boomer and a zoomer. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.